Welcome to Reddit Reads r/ProRevenge. Our first Reddit post is from Bitchitits. Had my half-brother removed from the will after he stole money from our father with Alzheimer's. Shortly after my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, my formerly estranged half-brother quit his job and moved in to help take care of my dad. Though there really wasn't enough money, it was agreed to pay him around $300 a week to make up for his missing income. During this time, my half-brother abruptly acquired durable power of attorney and usurped medical and financial. My mother and father had separate financial lives decisions. Several documents relating to my dad's pension, which were now my half-brother's responsibility, were not turned in on time, resulting in my dad missing out on a one-time payout of $8,000 and lowering his pension payout by $300 mo. My half-brother then cleaned out my dad's remaining savings, about $3,000, not discover until about a month later. 6 days later, our father hung himself in the basement. My dad left all of his insurance money and belongings to my mother. Us children were left with only sentimental items. My half-brother was visibly upset and shaking when the will was read. He acknowledged that my mother was receiving everything and left. About a month later, we discovered the missing money. Though he broke no laws because he had power of attorney, we insisted he pay it back, even offered to let him make payments over a 2-year period. He refused, and we have been no contact for 2 years now. Little did he know that he was in my mom's, his stepmother's, will. He would receive half of what is currently a $250,000 estate. I suggested to my mother that she remove him from the will. She did, and I am now the sole beneficiary. He stole $3,000 now, only to lose out on $125,000 later. TLDR. Half-brother stole $3,000 from sick father, only to be removed from the will and miss out on $125,000 later. This comment is from Eichnerlakorodens. Make sure it's mentioned that she left him nothing in the will, so he can't claim that she forgot. This comment is from Metone. My lawyer said to put in a nominal amount instead of just leaving someone out. That way they can't claim, I promised but forgot. This comment is from Erdnocheve. This needs to be the top reply. Our next Reddit post is from Dogalagopu. Become the worst neighbor and HOA board member ever, lose your job and HOA. Let me start by saying never purchase a house in a HOA. It is a complete mess that should be regulated and illegal. If I knew about HOAs when I bought my first home, I would have never purchased my first home in one. Me and my wife purchased our first home when we were 24 and 25. We spent months looking at houses and areas and tried to find a forever home in a good district for potential future kids, etc. We finally found a perfect one at a decent price. At first, everything was great, super nice neighborhood and decent neighbors. Well, a few months after buying the house, we rented an RV to go on a trip and parked it in the driveway for the 3 days leading up to the trip to pack it, and for me to learn how half the things in it work. Well, this is when we learned that HOAs are absolutely crazy, and our neighbor was on the board of our local HOA. Within an hour of it being parked, he got home and stormed over, demanding we remove it from his neighborhood or he would have it towed and fine us for every hour it was there. Myself, being the average and normal person, told him kindly to fuck off and get out of my driveway, and told him if he returns I'll call the cops, because he was screaming like a madman inches from my face. About 3 hours later, a big rig tow truck shows up. While Mr. Crazy board member might not listen to reason, the tow truck guy they found wasn't so fond of entering my driveway and towing a vehicle when I told him if he comes on the property, I'll call the cops. Once the tow truck driver decided he's done being involved in this mess and left, neighbor goes even more crazy and storms off. I call my friend to get his dad's number because he's an attorney, to ask him about this insane letter and fine I just received and to ask him some legal advice. After speaking to his father, he told me to come down, write him a $500 check, and bring along all the papers I received when purchasing the home and the current letter I just received. The next day, he had a very friendly letter sent to my neighbor and the HOA board, basically telling my neighbor to fuck himself in legal terms and to leave us and our property alone. I then continued to receive fines of $1,500 a day in plain envelopes, not postmarked, stuffed into my mailbox that I then turned over to my friend's father, and each time he sent another set of letters and contacted USPS to report the incidents. Turns out putting mail into people's mailbox is a crime, who knew? Well, we decide to go on our week-long trip across the state and mildly forget about it all. Kind of upset I had to spend $500 to have an attorney send letters, but that's what they do. Fast forward to us returning from the trip and the RV back in our driveway for 2 days so we can unload Clint, then return it. Again, each day more envelopes stuffed into our mailbox and more visits to our attorney and more letters sent and more incidents reported to USPS. Well, here's where the fun really begins. Turns out Mr. Crazy finally gives me a summons to appear before the board. My attorney said this is crazy illegal because what they've done is use what looks like an actual legal document improperly to summon me to the board. Another $500 to the attorney, and we wait for the date they made a Tuesday at 10 a.m. They attempt to keep my attorney out of the room on some board privacy rule, but quickly shut the hell up when he begins going over their own rules that they are violating to them. Deep in this HOA book are some very nicely worded rules and stuff outlining about what makes board members ineligible and how they cannot serve if they commit certain infractions. Well, guess what Mr. Crazy Neighbor has done? Committed several of them, all documented. Also, the cherry on top is that if 51 of the HOA members vote to dissolve the HOA, it all goes away. Well, it happens my wife worked part-time from home during this mess and had all the free time in the world to begin a disband the HOA campaign. Over the course of the next 2 months, she went around and really began to get to know our neighborhood really well. Turns out a lot of people dislike the HOA and the power-hungry seniors who act like dictators that run it. The HOA attempted to stall everything by holding no meetings, another HOA violation, and began their own campaign trying to change HOA rules to keep from being ousted, and a fairly racist flyer and letter to everyone explaining the dangers of not having an HOA and all the bad people, blacks and Mexicans, that will move in and take over, so that our houses would become much less valuable and everything else they could try. Turns out it's extremely fun to use someone's own rules against them. The neighborhood even started a fund that paid us back what it cost us to get the attorney started and the continued costs he had. A few weeks after their failed fear campaign and being forced to hold a meeting, a vote was called by using their own rules. The HOA was no more and all remaining funds were to be dispersed back to the homeowners and members equally. This never happened. Turns out somehow the HOA used all their funds in the course of the last 2 months. About half the former board members sold their homes and moved, including Mr. Crazy Neighbor. I've spent 3 hours trying to find old news articles because it was reported on, mostly due to the racist letters by the HOA, but it was too long ago to find anything. Moral of the whole mess: don't buy a home in an HOA, and if you do, plan to hire an attorney. This comment is from Federal. Should have investigated the disappeared funds. They probably didn't have any receipts to prove that they used the money for the intended purpose of repairs, etc. This comment is from Bob 785. I've heard lots of horror stories about hoes, and I'm glad yours got disbanded. I'm sure they have their place if they are run by reasonable people, but that seems to be few and far between. This comment is from Chog 145,236. I'm sure the IRS would have been more than happy to look into the board members. The absolute last branch of the government you want on your ass is the IRS. Now, a word from today's sponsor. Surfshark is an all-around VPN solution that can do everything from torrenting as well as streaming to browsing the dark web. Surfshark is one of the very best all-round VPN, terrific for Netflix, torrenting, confidential browsing, as well as staying safe on public Wi-Fi. Check out Surfshark today, link is in the description. Now back to the video. That was Reddit Reads r/ProRevenge. If you like this content, please subscribe and click the bell icon so you are notified of new uploads. We upload new videos every day. Also subscribe to our Patreon, as that will help us a lot. See you next time.